Worldslayer, the first ever paid expansion for Outriders, launches in a couple more days, or well, tomorrow, depending if you pre-ordered that or not for its early access. But in any case, this will completely change the game going forward, as it adds a brand new story, new zones, lots of insane new legendary items, and most important of them all, a brand new endgame loop that will probably keep you playing for a lot longer. And that is why in today's video we're gonna take a deep dive into everything you need to know about before playing Outriders Worldslayer. Now, the game adds a brand new standalone story campaign that you can immediately jump into even if you did not touch the original story, as the expansion kicks off after the events of the game's main story, and the anomaly that we know of has continued to evolve and become bigger than we expected. And with a bigger anomaly also comes more evolved enemies, and we've seen quite a lot of them with brand new nasty abilities, including the Shadow Beast, a new type of enemy that can make itself invisible and even silence you in combat. You'll obviously encounter way more than these in the brand new zones and biomes we can explore, including the Glacier's Edge and the Drift Water zones that we saw at the start of the Worldslayer campaign, beta, and the trailers. Main villain obviously is going to also be present, and it looks pretty badass. Her name is KhrazeGaming, I believe, and she is possibly the first ever altered, as in the very first demigod that has the powers that we have. She is the leader of a new human faction that calls themselves the Insurgents, and of course her motto is that there's no saving for humanity, and humanity is already dead, so obviously we're gonna have to stop her in her tracks. But to do all of that, we need to become stronger, much stronger as a matter of fact, and that's only possible through the brand new endgame loop, as well as by acquiring the brand new legendary weapons, armors, and the brand new tier 3 mods added with the expansion. Specifically, I want to focus a bit on the legendary gear, starting with the armor sets, as these are one of the main highlights of the expansion. So each class in Outriders will get a brand new 5-piece legendary armor set, as well as brand new universal 3-piece legendary armor sets that are usable by all classes. These look quite incredible, and like the design choice over here is definitely stunning. This was always the strong point for Outriders, as people can fly like always created really awesome looking concepts. Each legendary gear, on the other hand, in Worldslayer also comes and features brand new mods, but more on that in just a little bit. In the meantime, I want to focus a bit on some of these sets right here, especially the Concussioner for the Devastator. I'm pretty much in love with the effect on it, as this one spawns a golem clone that can jump towards enemies, dealing massive damage and a shockwave around enemies in a large area. Or maybe the Shield Beast if you prefer Trickster. This armor will focus on increasing your anomaly power depending how much shields you're gonna be able to generate, and there's others even more powerful ones for the Pyromancer and the Technomancer likewise. Previous legendary armor sets and mods will also get reworked to further promote new playstyles, and I think that that's one of the main highlights here, which is the fact that you're gonna be able to experience Outriders in a whole new way. And what better way to do that other than the brand new weapons and mods that totally got me by surprise. We've seen quite a number of these and how much they add to the gameplay. There's new effects, way stronger than before, and because there's a third mod slot for the Apocalypse gear that we're gonna check in just a little bit, you're gonna be able to create much more devastating results. In this case, we saw a brand new weapon called the Deathscape with a tier 3 Stigmatized mod. This will inflict toxic damage on enemies, and if they happen to die during that effect, this will literally cause a toxic skull to spawn that will further explode, spreading the effect to other nearby enemies and so on. Or one of my favorites, Sunfall with the Firestorm mode. This literally calls down a homing firestorm that will further increase in size the more you shoot, dealing millions of damage and also tracking enemies slowly. There's plenty more in there that we've seen, even ones that can cause volcano eruptions from the ground, and many other interesting effects that I cannot wait to test out. Now, of course, to get all of this, you need to take part in the brand new endgame loop, and this also brings us to the new progression systems. When you load into Worldslayer, your class screen will look something like this, as it will now include two new skill trees, one called the PAX skill tree and the other one called the Essential Levels. Now, the PAX class tree is a secondary skill tree that unlocks once you hit level 30 and have started the Worldslayer campaign. This one adds two new sub-branches for each class, completely separate from the existing three ones that we already have in the default game. For example, Pyromancer gets the Gunblazer and the Pyromaniac subtrees on top of the three ones it already has. Each node in the PAX trees is pretty much equivalent to the major nodes from the original class trees, so every choice that you do here will be very impactful on how your build behaves moving forward. Every class has them, and you're going to be able to unlock them by simply earning PAX points, which you do by progressing through the Worldslayer expansion. It's not going to be grind based, by the way, so there's no grind for it, but rather this is acquired by completing significant events through that expansion. On the other hand, we also have the Ascension system. This is basically the new long-term progression in Outriders Worldslayer. Basically, all XP that you now earn from level 30 and onwards, like for example from defeating enemies and such, goes towards your Ascension levels. There's about 200 of these in total, split into 4 different categories like Anomaly, Endurance, Brutality, and finally Prowess. Some of these points will provide better cooldown reductions, others will increase survivability and resistances, while others will purely improve your damage, among many other things. The idea behind this is that this will give the players an ongoing next level to work towards and make your character much stronger, which in turn is designed to just have you go in and go ham at the brand new enemies. There's nothing being gated if you don't level through these, so you're not gonna be locked out of content or items. These are purely on top of everything that already exists. And PCF confirmed that you'll need about 100 hours to fully fill them on, so yeah, as I've said, this is pretty long term out there. With that being said and done, this finally brings us to the end game of Outriders Worldslayer, and possibly the most exciting aspect of the expansion, as this includes the new Apocalypse difficulty system, the new Apocalypse gear that gives us access to the third weapon mod, and of course a massive new endgame zone called the Tarya Gratar. Let's begin with the Apocalypse system, as this completely replaces the old challenge tiers. Previously, these would only go up to level 30, while in the new update/expansion, that will instead go all the way up to 40, increasing both difficulty as well as the level of the loot that drops at the much higher levels. So the new max gear level will be 75, up from 50, but that's not the only thing that changes. The other thing is the fact that the higher you progress in the Apocalypse tiers, the higher the chances for Apocalypse gear is to drop. So let's talk about Apocalypse items too. These are special variants of the epics and the legendaries that we already have in the game, but they will also have a more shiny textured effect over them, as well as a distinguishable icon in the corner to make them like different than their normal counterparts. The biggest difference, aside of the visuals and the better stats, is obviously going to be the fact that the new ones will provide 3 mod slots instead of only 2. Like Outriders was already crazy enough with some of its interactions between these mods, well, we have a ton of new, even more insane ones that we saw so far, and I think it's safe to say that there's going to be a lot of new potential builds to create and crazy new ways to defeat enemies that personally I'm very excited for. On a final note, let's also talk about the brand new endgame zone called the Trials of Tarya Gratar, and this is going to be significantly different than anything you've seen so far in terms of kind of like similar structured endgame loot chases we've seen so far. So this is a huge new fully explorable area with changing weathers, day and nighttime scenarios, different biomes, and tons of opportunities to earn the best loot. there's going to be a new base camp at the entrance of this trial, so you're probably going to move here once you finish the main campaign of Worldslayer, which in turn also gives access to vendors, crafting, fast travel, your stash, and everything else that you might need, including some of the other 18 expeditions. What sets this apart from other expeditions is the fact that this zone is pretty much filled with other massive zones that will further include sub areas. Like for example, we're gonna get access to crossroads. These will give you the opportunity to get off the beaten path and explore the Tarya Grotar, which will more often than not also lead to throves. Then there's also boss areas. These are areas with completely new bosses and mechanics, and you'll pretty much have to defeat them to progress deeper into Tarya Grotar. Finally, there's also the throves, which I found to be the most interesting. These are areas with massive loot chests that provide one major advantage, and that is the fact that you can specifically target for specific apocalypse loot drops. So for example, there's gonna be throves that focus exclusively on helmet drops, others on chest pieces, others on feet, and so on and so forth. So you're gonna be able to specifically hunt for different pieces of gear that you might be currently missing. So far, Worldslayer looks really appealing actually, despite the price point. Of course, it's a matter of time to see if that's actually worth the $35 to $40 that I'm seeing on Steam, but I'm gonna let you guys know all about it in the upcoming days, as there's gonna be a lot of coverage of the new expansion and a lot more coming really soon. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.